Hi everyone! So this year was a very exciting school year all around, but what made it incredibly special is for the very first time I commissioned my first piece. For those that don't know what commissioning is, it's this process of finding a composer, living, breathing composer that will write a piece of music in a certain time frame for your ensemble. I met the incredible Joon Park. Joon Park is an Ithaca native, currently London-based composer that I had the opportunity to meet at a conducting event at Ithaca College last summer. He had briefly mentioned that he had wanted to write for younger bands, and I thought, I have the perfect candidates for that. By the time we got back to the 25-26 school year, I was informed where I presently work, where I got my start on flute, school district was celebrating its 90th birthday. Not only that, but it would be the final academic year for our incredibly supportive superintendent of schools. And thus, in spring 2026, all 4 elementary schools had been able to premiere Joon Park's work. A really, really great experience for the kids. It was really, really cool to see them go from learning a piece that has no reference recording. They have no resource to be able to just latch onto. If anything at all, they are and will be the first resource that other ensembles that choose to perform this work in the future reference. And that to me is just like insane. At the end of the year, once we performed it, it was our hope to gather with Joon for a little live Q&A. But between the end of the year clerical tasks, Joon Park being in London, I think it's a 6-hour ahead time zone difference. My performance schedule, his performance schedule, it just ended up not panning out during the school year. Mrs. Zalatan's students curated some questions at the end of the year. Without further ado, here is our Q&A session with composer of Spirit of the Ages, Joon Park.
Hi everyone, my name is Joon. I am the composer for the piece that was premiered a few months back called Spirit of the Ages, that was commissioned by Alyssa May Murphy. I wanted to take this time to answer just a few questions that the students had about my work and my music.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I play the flute, and my question for you is, when did you discover your love for music?
I guess this is a really hard thing to nail down, but I think at the end of the day, it comes back to some music educators that made a really big difference in my early education and early life, and probably the most important one being Mr. Bill Calhoun from DeWitt Middle School, where he actually was a composer himself, and up until then I'd just been a kid who wasn't really into music in any particular way, but one day he assigned homework to everyone in band, and of course most kids were like, oh, homework sucks, like why does band have homework? But actually it was to go home and write some music. And so I thought, hey, this is cool, like I can use computers to write music now and like figure out how all that's done. So I wanted to go home and take that time, learn how to do it, and then turns out it's actually really fun. And I brought it in, he encouraged me to do more, and eventually that turned into me writing a duet for cello and flute. And I think the moment I heard 2 of my friends play that piece that I wrote for the first time, I experienced that feeling of, wow, like there's nothing in the world quite like this feeling of hearing someone else play the music that you wrote. So that's kind of when it started, and also really thankful for many other educators along the way who kind of helped me through that journey. Nikki Zowell from Ithaca High School was a huge part of my journey. She graciously used rehearsal time to let me bring in pieces that I wrote for band and rehearse it, which was so invaluable. So massive thank you to those music educators for making a difference in my life.
Hi, I'm Hadley. I play the flute, and my question for you is, how many instruments do you know how to play?
My primary instrument is bassoon. I also know how to play saxophone, but I think those are really the only two instruments I could really purport to play. I guess if you really loosely stretch the definition of play and say stuff that I could maybe play a major scale or two on, I've played flute, clarinet, drum set, piano, guitar, a little bit of euphonium as well. I think that's most of it. But at this point, really couldn't do much on some of those instruments.
Hi, my name is Imani. I play the flute, and my question is for you. How many songs have you made?
Composers like to say we compose pieces, which I couldn't tell you why we say it that way, but in my entire life at this point, I've probably written, I don't know, at least 100 pieces, somewhere between 100 and 150 maybe. I think if you were asking me how many of those pieces I'd be willing to admit to have written or put in front of other people, much closer to 20 or 30.
Hi, I'm Nyla and I play the flute.
Hi, I'm Devin and I play percussion. Our question for you is,
What is your favorite song that you've made?
I think you can probably guess that most composers really struggle with this question, myself included. I do really think this is kind of an impossible question. So many pieces, you kind of pour your heart and soul into each one that you write. I mean, I think obviously this, this experience writing Spirit of the Ages was a great one, but there's also a trio that I wrote very early on, back in high school actually, for my audition to go study music at university, which was for clarinet, piano, and cello. And even to this day, I think that's like arguably one of the best pieces that I've written, and it's kind of such a fond memory for me to look back on, to realize it was written so long ago at this point. I also more recently wrote a string quartet called The Isle for actually my own wedding, so that is obviously a big highlight that is hard to top. Oh, I also wrote a film score when I was studying at Northwestern University on a student film called Shambles, and that was my very first film score that I've ever written, and even now I look back on it and I think that's probably my favorite piece of film or any media music that I've composed, so that's a fun one as well.
Hi, my name is Connor. I play the trumpet. And my question for you is, what ensembles do you traditionally write and perform for?
Wind band, concert band is kind of the only one that I find myself doing, although in the recent few years I have done some orchestra as well, some choir as well. I think back in college when I was getting my degree for composition, there was an opportunity to write for many different things. Film music I mentioned before. I wrote some trailers, even some video game music here and there. Yeah, there's been some really cool opportunities.
Hi, I'm Arya. I play the baritone. My question for you is, how hard was it to make Spirit of the Ages?
It was actually quite tough in the beginning, but I kind of think that's how it always is for my process. I think when you sit down and it's kind of a blank slate and you could go anywhere and have all these ideas, and I think that really is kind of the hardest part, and that's always tough no matter what you're working on. I do think this particular project was a little bit easier since I had a pretty good brief from Miss Murphy, who told me not only what this was supposed to commemorate, but also kind of the emotion that she wanted to convey as part of this piece, and what she wanted to celebrate. And as I got started and had a little bit more musical ideas on the page, I also got some feedback from her that was also quite helpful, so that helped me kind of steer the direction, which way to go a little bit. So I would say it definitely got easier as we had more of that information and the process went along.
Hi, I'm Keith. I play percussion. Hi, I'm Ian and I play the trumpet. Our question for you is, where did you get inspiration from to write Spirit of the Ages for us?
And so I got some really great information from Ms. Murphy, who gave me a bit of a brief of what this was supposed to celebrate and what it was commemorating, and kind of the the emotions around it. I do think the occasion itself was also a great one for me personally, because I've been told that this is a superintendent who retires with a record and history of supporting music and music education. And as you probably have guessed from the beginning of my video, music education is very, very important to me, and has been something that made a really big impact in my life. And I continue to try to give back and be involved in music education in and out of schools and community bands as well, wherever I can. So I think that kind of connection was really important to me, and was also a really great inspiration for writing the piece. And it's always fun to also think about all the players like you all who will be playing the piece, or have played the piece, or will be playing future music that I write. Those are definitely inspiring thoughts as I write.
Hi, my name is Annabelle. I play the flute, and my question for you is, how long did it take you to compose Spirit of the Ages?
The actual time period was probably something around 3 months or so, give or take, but of course I wasn't working on it the whole time. I actually don't write music full-time as a full-time job. So a lot of it's done, in the evening hours, or really, realistically, most of it's done on the weekends. So how long did it actually take? Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. But I think it's also helpful to do it that way. I don't know if I really could do this as kind of a day job, quote unquote, just because I think so much of my process, relies on doing a bunch of it, working really hard, and then stepping back for a while, taking a break, and then coming back to it with a fresh ear later, maybe after 3, 4, 5 days of not having thought about it. And I think that really does help me kind of approach it with a better revision each time.
Hi, I'm Timothy, and I play the saxophone. What's next for you as a composer? And what advice would you give to young musicians interested in writing their own compositions?
I am so glad you asked about this. As I mentioned, I actually don't work full-time as a composer. My quote-unquote day job is in the software industry, in tech. So I work at companies that some companies actually you might be familiar with. In the past, I've worked at places like Google and Spotify. So I write software for those types of companies. But given that, I think I try to do my best to find time to write music outside of that as much as I can. But we only have so much time in our day, and so I think in the near future, actually, there's not much composing ahead for me, and more conducting. It's hard for me to do both, so I try to kind of switch on and off. So much of my coming months will be dedicated to working as an assistant conductor for some of the community bands that I'm involved with here in London. I think really the most important thing for anyone who wants to get involved in composition or anything that has to do with creatively making music is to just do it. And I know that sounds quite simple, and maybe isn't the amazing advice you wanted to hear, but truly I believe, writing music, making music, creating music, whatever you might call it, whatever form it might take for you, I think one of the blessings of that act is that you really can, anybody at any skill level with any knowledge can really just go do it. And it's so easy to get so much joy out of it, because ultimately, it doesn't have to be for anyone other than yourself. It doesn't have to be, for a specific audience. I think it's so easy to really sit down and create music that you love, and you can use whatever it is you'd like. You can, play on your instrument and write your own music. You could get into a room with some of your friends and just jam and create something new that way. You could sit in front of your computer, use electronic instrument software, whatever it might be. I would encourage you to just go do it, and do something that really is only focused on you having fun and you making something that you think sounds cool and great and beautiful. And the more you do that, the more you'll get to the point where you realize, oh, this is something I can do, and this is something that maybe other people want to listen to as well. And eventually, if you do it enough, then you'll get to a point where you decide maybe you want to learn some music theory, or maybe you want to learn, some other instruments, or work with other folks to do it. So it all comes naturally, but in the very beginning, I would definitely say just do it. Whatever comes to your mind, your heart. I would wholly encourage you to write some music.
Thank you, Joon Park!
Thanks all. Hopefully this was informative and entertaining, and I am so glad that you all took the opportunity to learn and play my piece, and hope you all continue your journey of music from here on up.
So incredibly grateful to Joon Park for writing such an incredible piece for us. Thank you so much for watching, and happy summer break.